So if you're looking to accept payments using Nano, BrainBlocks is a great choice when you need a simple implementation. It's already super easy to set up, essentially having three components to it. So you have the actual container of where you want that button to go. You have some JavaScript, and that's what actually pulls in from the BrainBlocks library. It fills in whatever the amount of the button should be and where it should go. And then you have, after that payment has been made and it redirects you to the post page, it posts that BrainBlocks token. We need a way to verify that that token is valid, that the amount is correct, that the destination is correct, that it's going to your wallet and it's not the user trying to spoof something. So we need a way to verify that as well, and we just call a curl command to the BrainBlocks API. So again, this is already pretty simple, but there's a couple things that I wanted to maybe improve upon when you're doing this in multiple projects or if you need multiple buttons. So I wanted to build a Laravel package to help remedy a few things, and this is currently on GitHub under binary cabin/BrainBlocks. So I just spun up a brand new Laravel 5.6 project, and I'm gonna jump over there. So you can see it's just the very base of Laravel install. I haven't done anything to it yet. And just looking at the package documentation for BrainBlocks for Laravel, the first thing I want to do is install this package through Composer. I'm going to go ahead, copy that require line, bring up my command here, and just paste it in. So while that's installing, the other thing that I want to do, you can see here we have a configuration option that we want to put in here to just let BrainBlocks know what address I want any of these buttons to send to. So you can see it just says put in your .env file. I just want to put this BrainBlocks receive address and with my address in there. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to bring up my code here, jump into my .env file. This is where all your normal Laravel configuration would go. I'm just going to make a new line here for BrainBlocks receive address. And of course I don't want this demo address in there. I want to use my own. For this demo, I set up a brand new account, and you can see I have two things here. I have a customer account to simulate the customer going through the process of paying for something. And then I have an app account, and this is where I would want the money to go to. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this address. This back up. So I have my address in there. Fantastic. So the first thing I want to do is just, I'm going to get rid of this text here and maybe even this stuff. And all I want on this page is a button to test this out. Now with this, because we're using Laravel 5.6, I don't need to go into my facades or my service providers and add a link into there. It's already automatically done by the package. So I'm just going to go to resources, views, welcome.php, and this is all that we're looking at right now. We can see we have that Laravel text right there. I'm just going to change this to say BrainBlocks, and if everything's working as it should, I should be able to refresh this page, and there we go. So I can see that that's working. Now the second thing I'm going to do is this links section. I'm actually going to get rid of these links in here, and I'll just call this button. I'm not sure if there's any specific styles tied to that container. It doesn't look like it, so I think we're good to go. Or actually, I'll call this buttons because I might put multiples in here. I'm going to go back to the documentation here, and you can see we have a simple one-line option to put that button in. You just put the amount that you're taking, and once the payment is posted, where do you want this data, this BrainBlocks token which is created, to send to? And that's what we have to verify later. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to keep the same demo URL, just /pay. I think that's fine. So I'm going to copy this, put it into my buttons container, and there we go. Now, if I were to just look at it now, there's not going to be anything that happens because we don't have the JavaScript that's needed to run it. If I look at the page right now, I will see that there is some CSRF stuff from Laravel. There's a BrainBlocks token empty field. There's no value in it yet, and that's what we eventually want to populate. It generates a form, but it doesn't display the button yet because we haven't put our JavaScript in there. So the next thing I want to do is go to this second line where we're going to put our JavaScript in there, and that's just BrainBlocks scripts. So I'm copying that, jumping back here, and I'm just going to put that right before the body tag. We have our JavaScript. So one more time, if I go back here, refresh, there we go. We already have our button loaded. So very, very simple to do that part. And you can see if I view the page source, we're now entering all our JavaScript that we need. The cool thing about this is it's very easy to add a second button if I wanted to. So you can see we have our first one here, and there's some styles that we'd probably want to play around with that change up. But if I were using the regular BrainBlocks code that it gives you, you can't easily create a second button. You kind of have to play around with the script, and if you're not too familiar with JavaScript or how you might set that up, it could be a little bit tricky, because right now it's looking at the ID of the container, Nano button, and it's applying that. So if I were to just try and copy this a second time or copy the button a second time, it's not going to work. I have to play around with it a little bit more. I set up this package, so if I wanted to add a second button, all I have to do is just copy this. Maybe this second one is 2000, same URL, that's fine. And I'll go back here, hit refresh, and we have our second button that does the same thing. So let me just refresh that. And for now, I'm just going to take this second button out. So the next step is I want to make sure that when the user does pay something, it actually, the response is verified and everything looks good on that end. I'm going to my web.php, which is where all your basic routing is stored. Now I'm not going to worry about creating a new controller or anything like that. I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible, but this would work exactly the same if you were doing it by setting up a new controller. So what I want to do is I want to make a new post route at /pay, and this is what BrainBlocks is going to send to. Remember, because we told it to go to this /pay, and the button's always going to send a post request. So I'm going to say when I make a post to /pay, I'm going to make sure I get the request, and that's going to have whatever data is posted. So if you're already familiar with Laravel, that's something that I'm sure you've used before. And then I'm going to get rid of this welcome view. And for now, all I want to do to test this out is just dump out the data that we get from the request. So if you're filling out a form, this is what would show up in the form itself. The only difference is BrainBlocks is the one filling out this form, so we're going to have to see what data BrainBlocks is sending us. So to test this out, what I want to do is I'll just hit this pay 001 nano button, copy this address, and let's go ahead and from the customer account, I'm going to say send to this address 0.001. I think that's right. Yep. I'll hit send, confirm, and there we go, successfully sent. So now I just have to wait for BrainBlocks to pick that up and make sure it sees it. Now what I would expect is after this gets submitted, the JavaScript that's on the page then confirms it, sends it over to the, or submits the form that's there, posts it to this pay page, and now that pay page, /pay, that route that I had set up just kind of outputs this test data that I can see now. So I can see that when that form submits, it has that BrainBlocks token field with empty, or with the generated BrainBlocks token that they give me. So now the second step to this is to confirm that this token is valid. And we can do that with the get token response field and then the validate response. So the get token response is going to go to the BrainBlocks API, pass along that token value that we just saw, and it's going to give me a bunch of data about that. So I'm just going to copy this real quick. Copy this line, and instead of dumping that data out, what I'm going to do is call that get token response and then dump that response out. We're going to see exactly what BrainBlocks sends us back once we try and confirm this token. So I'm going to save that, and back here. I'm just going to go back to the page. So I'm going to click Pay Nano again. Copy that address. Do this one more time. Send to account 001. Send and confirm. Go back. There we go. Payment successful. Submits. And now we're going to see the exact dump of what would happen if we send that token to the BrainBlocks API and try and confirm it. So there's a lot of stuff we get back here. So we can see that we can confirm the amount that we sent. We get the actual send block and the sender back. So this is useful if you want to save it in your database. This user not only sent a successful transaction, but this is the actual block that it's tied to. And then that way, if the user says, hey, I sent this and did it go through right, you can point them to the exact block. So one of the things we want to make sure we do, and this is actually in the BrainBlocks documentation as well, is it says to match what you would expect. So for the amount, we want to make sure the amount's correct. The token's unique, so they don't keep trying to submit this token, and that the transaction is fulfilled. And this is so that if someone has a token already, a BrainBlocks token, from maybe another site or some test that they did, they can't try and submit that token to our pay form with that fake data. So this BrainBlocks package has a quick way to do that, which is just called validate response. So we're going to use that method. I'm just going to copy that again. And I'll just comment this out. We might want to check in on this data again in a little bit. But so I'm just calling this response is valid variable. And that's going to do a validate response method. I'm going to pass the response that we just got, and I'm going to pass a couple parameters in here. So what I could do is I could just leave this blank. If I were to do something like this, what that's going to do is it's going to check two things. It's going to check that the fulfilled parameter is true, and it's going to also check that the destination address is the same address that we typed in when we put that in the .env file. So it's going to make sure those two things are correct. So now, if I want to do one extra step, and I probably do want to do this, I want to make sure also that the amount is whatever I put in here. Now, the amount for our button is 1,000 in Rye. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure those are equal as well. So I just want to make sure that if I dump out, here's what I'll do. I'll dump the response, and then I'm going to die and dump this response is valid. So what it should say is it's going to start by just outputting all of the data that we get back, and then it's going to it should say true when we finish this. So by the end of this, I can say, okay, not only is this all the data that we get back, and maybe I'll store that in my local database, but then we also have a true or false if this is all successful. And maybe I would store that as a separate, successful BrainBlocks response parameter in my database. Let's go back here. I'll just go back, pay 001, copy, send to 001, send. Let's go back, make sure it goes through, payment successful, submits, and you can see we get this true. So we know that at least in terms of our fulfilled, the amount, and the destination, everything is good so far. Now BrainBlocks does suggest that we also match that the token is unique, so that they're not trying to submit the token multiple times. Maybe in here, before I do anything here, I'll do something like, existing payment equals payments where so I'm going to start by just checking my database to see, do I have a payment in my database where this BrainBlocks token already exists. And if I do have an existing payment, I just return an error back to the user that says, a duplicate or something like that. So if the payment already exists there from this token, if they've already tried to submit this token, I'm just going to return an error. Other than that, I'm going to get the response. I'm going to check to make sure that the response is valid. And then finally, we could say something like, if response is not valid, shows some sort of error to the user. Otherwise, return them to a different page or show a success message. Now, the final thing I want to note is we have this amount_array amount, and it's not, you'll notice that obviously I'm not paying 1,000 nano, I'm paying 0.001 nano. And that just has to do with the way, that BrainBlocks takes the amounts. They don't take it in the ticker symbol nano that you usually see. And this also has to do with the different types of units that nano falls into. And I can look that up real quick. If I go to, I think I could just search NanoUnits. We'll say nano currency units, crypto units. Okay, yes, that's what I want. You can see we have a bunch of these different units we could kind of talk in, and that's just sort of like the way when you're dealing with Bitcoin, you have the actual amount of Bitcoin, and then you have a Satoshi. Now in this case, we have a lot of different types of units for Nano, but when it comes to the actual symbol of Nano, like how much Nano you have, that you would see on an exchange or whatever, that's actually an MXRB. And this is now, I'm not sure if we have a newer version of this, but now you'll also see it as instead something like M Nano instead of MXRB. So if I were to go to my account here, I have 0.01 M Nano in my account when it comes to these types of dividers. If I look at BrainBlocks, it's looking for amount RAI, which is essentially the same thing as this XRB. So then we have to kind of do these different conversions, and if I want BrainBlocks to know that I want 1 nano instead of 0.001, you kind of have to play around with knowing how the calculations work and mess around that way. So if I jump in here, you can see if I wanted my button to be 1 nano, I might play around with the zeros and try and figure it out that way. Maybe you're good with math and you'll get it right away. So one other thing that I set up, there we go, so now I've pay 1 nano. So it gets confusing. So one of the other packages that I built that I can demo real quick is just called NanoUnits. And this is something that I'm still in development on and looking for support as well. So if you wanted to jump into this, make some pull requests and kind of give it a look over, that would be great. But essentially what you can do here is you can just call this NanoUnit convert method and say I want to convert M nano to K nano, and this is the amount that I'm converting, and it'll return the converted value from one unit to the other. So I'm going to use that in this app, so that way I could just say I want 1 nano, the ticker symbol nano, and it's going to convert it as needed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and install this package. So that's installing, and then what I want to do is I'll copy this line here as our example. And now before I actually replace it with this value, I'm just going to dump the value out and make sure I'm actually getting what I would expect. So I'm just going to say, we'll just do a die and dump and convert M nano, K nano, 99 for the value. We'll swap these out later, but I just want to make sure that this is printing something out first. There we go. So it's printing out 99,000. So again, what we want to eventually see is we would expect to see 1 million, and that's going to give us our 1 nano as nano ticker symbol, which again ends up being an M nano value. So that's what we want to get. And you can actually go on the units available option here, M nano. And what I might actually end up doing is making aliases for these as well. So I'll have an M nano and an M XRB, just so you can use both interchangeably, and might make it a little less confusing, but for now at least what we want is M nano to start with, because we can say I want 1 nano as the nano ticker symbol. But actually I do have an alias for ticker to make this a little bit simpler. So if you know that you want this much as nano, the main nano ticker symbol, we can just use that. That's going to be a lot easier to understand, I think. So I'm going to say convert 1 nano as the nano ticker symbol, convert that to K nano, and we'll see what we get. So if I go back, refresh, you can see I have 1000. And that's, again, because K XRB is still a different number than what we're trying to pass through, which is actually this XRB. BrainBlocks calls it array, and now you're going to start seeing it called nano as a lowercase nano. So we would actually have nano, which is like the ticker symbol that you would see, which is actually equal to M XRB or M nano, and then we have nano or XRB, which or again as I think BrainBlocks lists it as Rye. So if I want to get that value, I'm going to be converting it to the nano unit. So I'm going to say convert it from the ticker M nano amount, convert it to the nano amount, which we already saw was 1/1,000,000th of a nano, and I want 1 nano to be the expected outcome. So save that, go back here, refresh, and I should have 1,000,000 as my number here. So now if I pass that along, I know that the value is going to be the same. So when I save that, refresh, it should just say pay 1 nano. So now I don't have to worry about trying to convert it every time. If I want 99 nano to my account, I hit refresh, pay 99 nano. So I think that works great. Again, the units are kind of confusing, and I'll probably add some extra aliases in here just to make it a little bit easier, but at least we know that's working for now. So perfect. Now I don't want 99 nano in there. I'm actually going to just bring that back to 0.001, and now if I go back, it should be 0.001. So now it's great. We don't have to worry about converting it each time. I can just change this number and we're good to go. So throughout the whole process, we're good now. I click that, copy the address I'm sending to. My customer sends that to that address they're shown. And then from there we do whatever checks we need to do, and we return the successful message to the user. We save stuff to the database, we send them to a different page, whatever we need to do from there.